Imagine losing someone you love deeply. The pain is unbearable, and the question haunts you: why would a loving God allow this? Today, we're diving deep into this heart wrenching question and exploring if there's a hidden purpose in our pain. Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you'll not only understand why it's necessary for God to allow evil, but more importantly, what he did and is going to do about it. I'm Dr. Jack Mumford. Welcome back to Quiet Part Out Loud. Today's topic is one of the most challenging questions of faith. Why does God allow evil and suffering? We'll explore different perspectives to help you not only understand, but answer why God allows evil. Evil and suffering are undeniable parts of our world. From natural disasters to personal losses, the question arises: if God is all-powerful and all-loving, why doesn't he stop evil? This is known as the problem of evil, and it's a question that has troubled humanity for centuries. Epicurus, a Greek philosopher, first posed this dilemma, and it's since been echoed by thinkers like David Hume and J.L. Mackie. One explanation is the concept of free will, as proposed by Alvin Plantinga. God gave humans the ability to choose, and unfortunately, that includes the choice to do evil. Free will is essential for genuine love and moral actions. But what about natural disasters or diseases? Clearly, there's more to unpack here. Natural disasters pose a significant challenge to the idea of a benevolent God. Neil deGrasse Tyson famously argued against God's existence, using the example of the Great Lisbon earthquake of 1755.
But a famous example is an earthquake in Lisbon, Portugal. When was it? 1755, somewhere around there. 80,000 people died. By the way, that earthquake took place on All Saints' Day, in the morning, when most people, Lisbon, one of the holiest cities in Europe, most people were in church. Churches were the largest structures of the day. If you have an earthquake, what's the first building to collapse? It's the ones that are the largest, the most susceptible. So, people died in churches. Then, there's a tsunami that basically wiped Lisbon off the map. Either God is not all good, or God is not all powerful. But it's not clear whether God could be both of those at the same time for that event.
This devastating event occurred on November 1st, All Saints' Day, a major religious holiday when many people were attending church services. According to Tyson, the earthquake, followed by a tsunami and fires, killed approximately 80,000 people in Lisbon, Portugal. Many of the victims were worshipers in churches, which were among the tallest and largest buildings in the city at that time. Tyson points out the tragic irony that on the holy day, when people were gathered to worship, they met with disaster instead of divine protection. This event, Tyson argues, challenges the notion of an all-powerful and all-loving God. He questions how a benevolent deity could allow such devastation, especially to those engaged in religious devotion. However, this argument overlooks several important considerations. Limited perspective. We don't have God's infinite knowledge or wisdom. What seems senseless to us may serve a greater purpose that we can't comprehend. Natural laws. Earthquakes are part of Earth's geological process. A world without them might be uninhabitable. Free will. God allows natural processes to unfold, respecting the free will he gave humanity, which extends to our choices about where and how we build our cities. The eternal perspective. If we believe in an afterlife, death is not the end of the story, which changes how we might view such tragedies. Isn't it interesting that people were repenting, praying, worshiping, and hoping that God would act? He may not have acted physically, but he did spiritually by saving their souls from a worse fate than an earthly death. William Lane Craig offers an insightful perspective here. He suggests that if we knew all of God's reasons for allowing suffering, it might actually interfere with his plans. Our limited understanding may be necessary for certain goods to come about. The key point is this: our inability to understand why God allows certain events doesn't mean there isn't a good reason. It's a reminder of our limited perspective in the face of an infinite God. If we had God's power, we'd make changes from sunrise to sunset. But if we had his wisdom and knowledge, we'd leave everything as it was. Some theologians, like John Hick, argue that suffering serves a purpose. It's a crucible for character development. This is known as the soul-making theodicy. While this perspective can be hard to accept, it suggests that our trials can lead to personal growth and spiritual maturity. Clay Jones, in his book, Why Does God Allow Evil?, also supports this view, emphasizing that suffering can lead to virtues like courage and compassion, for without such tests, these character traits are impossible to obtain. What makes someone a hero is directly related to the sacrifices they have to make. It's not because they're strong, superhuman, powerful, fast. It's because they sacrificed. Let's consider the possibility that our perspective is too limited. William Lane Craig offers a poignant illustration. Imagine a mother and father who lose their daughter. The pain is unimaginable. But what if God's purpose in this tragedy is to bring them closer to Him and to each other? If they knew this was the reason, it might change their response and thwart God's ultimate plan. Sometimes the reasons for our suffering are hidden to ensure that God's greater purposes are fulfilled. Of course, there are strong objections to these explanations. Critics argue that an omnipotent God could create beings with free will who always chose good. However, this may be logically impossible, as true free will necessitates the possibility of choosing evil. Others question the soul-making theodicy, pointing out that the amount and intensity of suffering seem excessive for mere character development. But our limited perspective may prevent us from seeing the full scope of spiritual growth needed for eternity. Tim Keller, in his book, The Reason for God, points out that Christianity offers a unique perspective on suffering. Jesus, God in human form, didn't just observe our suffering from afar. He experienced it firsthand. He faced betrayal, pain, and death. This means that God understands our suffering intimately and has done something to reckon with evil once and for all. Now let's address a common objection from skeptical atheists who argue that the existence of evil disproves God. Richard Dawkins, in his book The Blind Watchmaker, writes, "In a universe of blind physical forces and genetic replication, some people are going to get hurt. Other people are going to get lucky. And you won't find any rhyme or reason in it, nor any justice. The universe we observe has precisely the properties we should expect if there is, at bottom, no design, no purpose, no evil, and no good. Nothing but blind, pitiless indifference. If God does not exist, then nothing is wrong, right, moral, or immoral." Dawkins himself acknowledges that without God, there is no design, no purpose, no moral framework. This means that the very concept of evil becomes meaningless. If we reject God, we must also reject any objective basis for calling anything evil or good. It's a paradox that the existence of evil, which atheists use to argue against God, actually points to a moral lawgiver who defines what is good and evil. So is God's plan hidden in our pain? The quiet part out loud is this: we may not have all the answers, but we have a God who understands our suffering intimately. He's not distant or uncaring. He's right there in the trenches with us. Consider this: the worst day in human history wasn't when that earthquake devastated Lisbon. The worst day was when the Son of God was murdered on the cross. But if God can take the worst day in human history, which proves he cares about our suffering, and in 3 days make it the most celebrated day in all of human history, no day is beyond his reach to make right. Maybe not in this life, but we have a hope beyond what we presently know. As the Apostle Paul reminds us in 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verses 17 and 18, for our light and momentary troubles are achieving for us glory and eternal glory that far outweighs them all. So we fix our eyes not on what is seen, but on what is unseen, since what is seen is temporary, but what is unseen is eternal. As you face your own struggles, remember, your tears of pain can become tears of hope. Because even in our darkest moments, we are not alone. God sees, God knows, and God cares. Thanks for watching Quiet Part Out Loud. Remember, the truth isn't always loud, but it can't be silenced. Stay informed, stay faithful, and keep speaking the quiet part out loud. Until next time, God bless.